Good morning, everyone. We'll begin momentarily. As folks are joining in, please feel free to include your information in chat as you arrive. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. I'm Anurag Pandey. I'm professor of civil engineering at Cal Poly State University in San Luis Obispo, and I'm also the director for the Safety Navigator for California Communities, which is a program supported by Caltrans's Local Assistance Division. And our mandate is to help local governments, MPOs, and tribal governments here in California apply for federal grant and secure safety funding for their communities. Um, so, so this is our webinar on Safe Streets and Roads for All program 2026 fiscal year. And the deadline, as you know, is in May 24th. So, we are here to support these communities, our communities applying for that grant. And this is our first in the series of two webinars that we're going to be holding on SS4A. And I really appreciate you all joining. Oops. So first off, let's start with a participant poll. Deborah, if you could start the poll here for us. Just if you can quickly note what best describes your organization. Is it, city or MPO or tribal government? You see the options here.
So sorry, I'm having a little trouble. 1 second.
Sure.
There it
Perfect.
goes.
Thank you, Deborah. The poll is now on. So please go ahead and submit. And as you're submitting this poll, if you have already submitted, what I would suggest is that perhaps you can go to this URL here, which Deborah will also post on the chat. And this is just a participant journal for today's webinar where you can take notes, note your questions that you can ask at the end of the panelist or of the host of this webinar, the Safety Navigator for California Community staff. So you can note all of that down. And this is also a tool that can be used beyond the webinar. So you can, if you have some ideas that you want to jot down there, it's a Word document that you can download from this URL. So if you've already responded to the poll, you could perhaps start downloading this participant journal for today's webinar. Oops, sorry about that.
Okay, here it comes.
Deborah, I just want to confirm the panelists can see, I mean, the participants can see the chat messages and submit chat, right?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm having a tiny bit of issue, but I'm almost there. I believe so. 1 second.
Great. Thank you. And this URL is easy enough that you can even type this up we've created it that way. So if you want to just go ahead and type that up. Perfect. Okay, so the link is in the chat, I believe. So you guys can go ahead and click on that and download the participant journal. And I'm going to go ahead and outline the agenda for today. Uh, First, I'm going to just provide some quick updates from our program, Safety Navigator for California Communities. And then we'll talk a little bit about the fiscal year 2026 notice of funding opportunity. What are some of the key updates? What are some of the things that are, really somewhat new in this program, and some of the upcoming resources and deadlines from this federal highway that you should be aware of? And then we'll switch on to the panelist presentation. We have John D'Annunzio from San Luis Obispo Council of Government. We have Chris Gioni from and Barbara Voss from City of Morgan Hill. And both of these are California MPOs and California community that have been successful in receiving grant funding from SS4A. A program, and both of them implemented a planning grant. They've received a planning and demonstration grant as well. And then last but not the least, we'll have presentation from the team at the Reconnecting Communities Institute. That'll be Anna Charpentier, Melissa Diaz, and Will Sloan, and they will be speaking about if you have a grant that can potentially be a fit with some of the goals of the Reconnecting Communities program, you can submit those types of grant under SS4A as well, and they'll be discussing certain examples that they have supported in the past. And their mandate is somewhat similar to SNCC in that, somewhat analogous to SNCC in that they support reconnecting communities type grant, type projects throughout the nation, throughout the United States, and they provide technical assistance and other resources that they will be able to describe as well. And then after each presentation, we'll have a brief interval for questions and answers. And then, we'll also take some questions at the end for all panelists as well as the SNCC team. And then we'll wrap up some next steps and acknowledgments at the end. And then also I'll be sharing our next webinar that's going to happen in May, on May 13th. I'll share the link for registering for that webinar. And then you'll also have some opportunities. If you register for that webinar, you'll have an opportunity to kind of guide the content of that webinar, like what would be most helpful to you about 10 days before submissions, right? So what we'll try to do is we'll try to help you out with your specific needs. So you'll have an opportunity to share with SNCC how you would want that webinar to go. So we'll wrap up with that at the end. Are there any questions in the chat? Okay, so first, real quick about SNCC. I'm sure some of you are already familiar with it, but it's a Caltrans funded initiative to California to help California local agencies, tribes, and transportation partners to pursue federal grants. And this link that Deborah will be this QR code will take you to a link that Deborah will be posting, and that is basically to sign up for our monthly newsletter where we share some resources and share our upcoming programming. And we also work with CalTAP, the California's local technical assistance program run by CSU Long Beach. And we work with them and we share some resources that they share with us. So yeah, please reach out to us and get connected and to receive our newsletter. And we send out the newsletter once every month during the first week of every month. And we provide no cost trainings. We provide one-on-one assistance. You can meet with us one-on-one, and you'll have opportunity to see that link at the end of this webinar as well. And then we emphasize practical guidance, and we want to support our rural, tribal, and underserved communities. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn. So this is the QR code that'll take us to our LinkedIn page. and we've been very active there. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing that link as well. And then in terms of upcoming opportunities, this is the one that we presented at our last webinar as well, but this is still active. So this is Rural Opportunity to Use Transportation for Economic Success, the Routes Initiative. The federal government is still seeking input from us, from our local communities on that until April 24th. So there is still some time left for you to provide comments on this. So please go ahead and maybe either bookmark this page on your phone via the QR code, or you can use the link that Deborah has provided in the chat to navigate to this and just kind of bookmark it for future use. And you still have 10 days to provide comment on this initiative, the Routes Initiative. And one other resource I wanted to share, because all of you us are here for the SS4A, and some of you might already be aware of this. The next webinar from Federal Highway is on SS4A supplemental planning and demonstration activities. So this is after you've gotten a planning grant for the most part. And if you are in that boat, if you're planning to submit for planning and demonstration activities and how to decide whether it's a planning and demonstration versus implementation, I think the next webinar tomorrow is going to be super helpful to you. So this is the link to register for that webinar. And also you'll find on that same page, you'll find the links to recordings of past webinars as well. So you should go ahead and register for this webinar, but then also the feds have recordings from the past webinar available as well. And they've done one on implementation grant already, and they've done one on planning grants as well. So those have already occurred. And you can watch those recordings if you haven't, even if you didn't get a chance to register before, those recordings are publicly available. Okay, before I get into the key updates, are there any questions in the chat? Deborah, if you could, I'm not able to see them right now, but if you could.
I apologize. I'm working on a glitch on my end in getting the chat enabled. So I've seen a couple of your comments. I'm working on that, and stand by. Thank you for your patience.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Um, Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and talk a little bit about the key updates for the SS4A fiscal year 2026. Um, and for SS4A, I think this cycle there is only 30% set aside for planning compared to 40% for the last fiscal year. And as most of you would have noticed, that application period is 60 days as opposed to 90 days. And the rationale for that, as explained by Federal Highway, is that they want to get the money in the hands of the communities to implement things as soon as possible. So one conclusion or if you analyze the difference between the 2025 notice of funding opportunity versus 2026. There is a little bit more focus on implementation side of things, getting dollars into the hand of the community and making sure that they can actually, start to deliver projects um, and then they have, as you know, there are two different types of grants: planning and demonstration grants and implementation grants. And there are different checklists that are available via the federal website. So that's, I think, would be a good place to start for you, for the communities, to start looking at those lists and making sure that you have all of those elements in place to submit the grant that you have. One thing I wanted to highlight from those checklists, and I'm sure you've all seen it, but one thing that I wanted to highlight was this, for the implementation grants, there is on or before April 24th, you can email the FHWA's SS4A team. And what they will do for you is that if you fill out the self-certification eligibility checklist, they will let you know if if your a safety program is in fact eligible for, or your implementation grant is in fact eligible to be submitted under that program. Because as you know, to have an implementation grant, you have to have a safety plan in place that meets the criteria that the Federal Highway Administration has set. But they will do the check for you if you have certain concerns, whether you're not sure, if that's a good implementation grant or not, or if this meets the criteria for an implementation grant. The feds, the FHWA staff, the SS4A team will check it for you. You just have to make sure that you reach out to them on or before April 24th with a self-certification eligibility checklist for the implementation grant. So this eligibility review is for implementation grants. So if you're submitting one, I think this will be a wonderful resource. And again, if you have questions about how to fill out that self-certification eligibility checklist, please reach out to Safety Navigator. At the end of this webinar, we'll be providing one-on-one assistance link, as well as information about uh, in how you can connect with us, and please reach out to us if you have any questions about looking at that self-certification eligibility checklist. I think one other thing to highlight on this for this year is that there is a public safety priority that I noticed as I was reviewing the notice of funding opportunity for this year. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to look at SS4A with a more holistic sense. They are trying to look at what is the role of the emergency medical services systems, the dispatch improvements, the blood delivery. So basically, what happens post collision, and in fact, the you can find a couple of excellent webinars, the EMS focused, what happens at the time of response, how the emergency medical services respond to a crash scene, and then 911 focused, which is where the call comes in and what happens during the call, and if you have the systems in place. And I think a lot of our California tribal communities can really benefit from this. So I think this will be an excellent thing to apply for, either as a planning and demonstration grant or even as an implementation grant, if you can get collaboration going with your EMS, emergency medical services, or 911, your emergency dispatch systems. So this is again a new thing, or not exactly a new thing in this program, but there's a lot more emphasis this year on this. They also highlight so the webinars that I've linked here, that Deborah would be posting in the chat, is that all of these links. So these are these are the webinars that the Federal Highway conducted in March of this year, and these webinars provide excellent resource in terms of what past grantees have done to get EMS related funding from the SS4A program, and for the 911 call response program. And one thing to note though is that if you're going to apply for these types of funding, your safety program or your safety plan should include those components, right? So if you don't have a program safety plan, and an eligible safety plan that includes these EMS and dispatch improvement components, then you have two options. Either obviously you can apply for a planning grant that does that, to update your safety plan to do that at least for this year. And the other option is that perhaps reach out to your county, reach out to your metropolitan planning organization. Perhaps their plan includes those components. So as long as you fall within that county's geographical area or that MPO's geographical area, as long as that is the case, then you can latch on to that. So that's a possibility that you can do. Now, one thing to remember is that if you do need to update your safety plan, you can go ahead and apply for the planning grant and perhaps be eligible for that. But one thing to keep in mind that in this current form, this is the last SS4A grant program. So the funding will be exhausted after this year. But there is some conversations already happening in Washington, D.C. about kind of coming up with the next iteration of the SS4A program. So I'm very hopeful. I expect that this program will continue in some form. So I will still encourage that if you don't have your own planning in place, the safety plan in place that is eligible and that kind of takes the safe systems approach, you should apply for that grant. Even though this is the last funding cycle, we do expect that this program will continue. And then, as I talked about, the other option, if you don't have a plan as in within your community, perhaps broadening your horizon to your county or to your MPO might be another way to reach out and still be able to either submit a planning demonstration grant or an implementation grant that is focused on these elements. Because I do think they are they are prioritizing these elements in this year's program. Okay, so with that, this is sort of the my part of the presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and invite Mr. John D'Annunzio from San Luis Obispo Council of Government to be our next speaker, and then I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that John can share his.
We've got you on mute, John.
Okay, how about now?
Perfect. Thanks.
Good morning.
Perfect. Thank
And
you.
can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Pandy and as well as Caltrans local assistance for pulling this together and really kind of launching the Safety Navigator, and also for having, Dr. Pandy, the patience that you show to your students, also showing to us practitioners as we try to work for our communities and bring kind of share safety lessons together. So again, my name is John D'Annunzio. I'm in the programming and project delivery branch of San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. We're a metropolitan planning organization. We're one of the smaller MPOs in terms of people, but we do cover a pretty medium-sized, I guess, for the state geography. And today I want to talk, I really kind of have two parts to this presentation, with part one going over our road safety action plan, and then part two, for lack of a better title, 10 easy things for better safe streets for all action plans and demo grant applications. I think I have about 15 minutes for this, so I'm going to just keep to my timer, but then so I'm going to try to go through the first part maybe a little bit quickly with the slides, and then the second part we'll try to slow it down a little bit. But of course, here's a crash on State Route 46 near the Chelam Y. For those that know our county and the history, this is not far from where James Dean died in 1955. At 24 years old. Since 1955, there's been a lot of collisions and crashes out in this vicinity. This particular crash is not fatal. I've kind of learned in the last couple of years that when we show images of crashes at presentations, that it's probably a good practice not to show fatalities. And if you have any questions about showing photos, just to check with CHP or the police to see if there's an investigation still going on. But of course, this, I understand, was speeding and distracted driving were likely factors in this crash. And crashes like this continue to be a pretty real part of our existence out here. Now, this is a rural part of the community. There are more urban areas in San Luis Obispo as well. And our plan looked at both. And I do want to just take a minute to acknowledge, what we're going to be talking about today is really pretty serious. Many of us know somebody or have had family members or friends who have lost their lives due to a crash, or have had, been severely life altering, and that affects communities and people. It's very personal. And as we worked through the safe systems approach and the action plan, we didn't start off thinking that we were going to end up hosting a World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims, but we ended up getting there, particularly as we were exploring post-crash care and kind of what happens to people um, after a crash. And one of the tools that we started to incorporate with that was was actually kind of poetry. So we reached out to our poet laureate, who was willing to come to a few of our workshops. Um, as of course, poetry is kind of a good medium for dealing with grief. Which is maybe, as traffic engineers and planners, we don't talk about that often, but we all kind of end up there in this work. So just quickly, here are some of our crash stats. It's about 800 crashes a year, with 30 people losing their lives and 160 suffering life-changing injuries. And from talking with people who are first on the scene, typically there's not any real reason why somebody is severely injured or fatal. Like the line can often just be luck between what is a severe injury and then a fatal injury. And so I think that that's why we loop fatals and severe injuries together and focus on them the most. And then I will just mention too that we in SLO landed on the road to zero, as opposed to vision zero. The city of SLO has a vision zero, road to zero for the county. We thought might be more applicable. Going through the work, there was an emphasis on driver behavior and reducing speeds, illegal turning as kind of the main causes in our area. But I also wanted to highlight that we uncovered quite a lot of wildlife strikes in our area, as well as railroad, and then homeless were sort of subcategories of causes that might not be popping as much in the data, but certainly were what people were experiencing um, quite a lot. Um, Big points of our plan was to build awareness, provide decision-making tools, prioritize investment. But the key is that it wasn't just a document, that it was meant to be sort of a platform and a process to go through. And I want to just come back to the safe systems approach. I mean, I really maybe tried to double down on this in terms of understanding and really trying to convey this message when we're going out, particularly with other practitioners and then other the fire and the police people that we were ended up talking to a lot, to let them know that they weren't alone in all this. And I think in our plan, we really explored these elements quite a lot, with the exception of the safe vehicles. We had felt that as planners, that wasn't something we weren't able to control with policy. Um, but we did explore these others, and I did kind of on the upper right-hand corner notice that the state recently is exploring and putting out safer land use as an additional element to that. And so some of our stakeholders and partners that we got involved with, I'm glad that Dr. Pandy mentioned about the 911 focus as being important this cycle, because of course on our particular journey, we got to know our emergency medical services staff a bit better. So again, I'm working at the MPO, so I'm not a city or a county, and we don't have the same relationship or ongoing relationship that a local police department would have with the city, or with CHP has with the county, or CAL FIRE has with the county. We're a bit more in the policy programming level. So we needed to kind of get to know these people, and start working with them. And it turns out that the data that the emergency medical services staff collect, is different. They keep records of things like helmets on bikes and stuff like that. Likewise, the sheriff coroner's office, we ended up asking them, or having one of our supervisors ask them, to add homeless status to their yearly reporting for fatalities, because they weren't logging it quite that way. And I think I saw that practice maybe up in the Bay Area, and we tried to adopt it here. Big partnership with public health. They just have been awesome, their staff. And they all went through a lot with COVID. So that was pretty tough. Here's just an example of our Road to Zero committee, and then an image of our proclamation. The proclamation itself was pretty straightforward, but it did take a lot of wordsmithing. And I mean, honestly, making the proclamation was one thing, but how that's played out over the last couple of years, and the pushback that we've had on trying to get to zero by 2050, and then hearing kind of the emerging discussions from other cities like in Denver and LA, how having a goal like that is aspirational. Like, oh, you'll never get to it. That still continues to this day. But I did want to point out too, and share one of the things, and kind of where we started. If you look over at 2022, we started with a safety forum initially. This was part of developing a culture of safety, which is a really good place to start, and start to build people into that. And I do want to mention that we did this before we even submitted our Safe Streets for All grant. And so a lot of what I'm kind of going to show this morning has to do more with what you might put as a supplemental or an attachment to your grant application. Um, so yeah, so then here's just some examples of that. Because we're a rural area, I ended up, and then I went to University of Montana and National Center for Road Safeties in Bozeman. We started to kind of latch a little bit on to what they put out, kind of with a National Rural Road Safety Awareness Week. They do it in July, and this is kind of, it was kind of an interesting thing for our area, and we modified it by including wildlife strikes as well. We worked hard to integrate with our local Latino Outreach Council, and were surprised to learn that we were very welcome at the Dia de los Muertos fiesta, and in the Mission Plaza several times, but it's only because we had brought them into the process a little bit earlier. We did go through the steps of a public feedback map as we were rolling out the action plan, and looking at the data analysis, we ended up with this is kind of like our high injury network. We're calling them regional priority locations, emphasizing on reducing speed, impaired and distracted driving, vulnerable road users. Now, I know that there's a lot of data that underpins this, and I've kind of jumped to that, but I didn't want the data focus to take away. It's almost a separate thing. But what we were trying to do was to provide tools like with an online dashboard for developing local safety champions. We did field walks, which I'll talk about in just a second. But really, the social media side of this, and matching up our social media campaigns with CHP, is really one of the softer, kind of lighter things that we could do. So being sure that your applications include time and budget for your public information officers, I think is pretty important as well. And then we've sort of ended up now with rolling out pop-ups. So we're rolling out 6 or 7 pop-ups this spring. Actually, next month we have a number coming during our bike month. And a number of these have been tied to our walk audits and coming right out of our um, safety implementation from our safety plan. I do want to get into, now we're in part 2, and this is going to be a countdown of 10 easy things for better Safe Streets for All action plan and demo grant applications. Um, Number 10, start with momentum and convene a regional safety forum. So I don't know if you have one of these going already, but if not, consider this as a really easy tool to get going, to kind of bring everyone together in the safety space in your region. Again, I kind of started with, I invited people that represented different aspects of the safe systems approach wheel, with the exception of safer vehicles. We've been trying to get somebody for safer vehicles, and we will eventually, but that's not where we ended up focusing. Number 9, tell the story by positioning your plan as a journey. So in our area, we're lucky enough to have something called the Seven Sisters. That's more a rock over in the corner, number 1 flag, and then it goes all the way to San Luis Obispo, kind of at Cerro San Luis, which is the number 7 flag. And as I was communicating this out to the fire chiefs and the police chiefs and other people, just saying that, look, we need to hit each of these 7 points as part of the action plan and the NOFO, and help us get to just climb Laura Rock or climb Black Hill or Cabrillo Peak and stuff like that, Hollister Peak. And some of them were more challenging than the others, but this did sort of help with the storytelling of that, and you might have something unique in your area too. Number 8 is building your frontline partnerships. That means engaging CHP, fire chiefs, and their public informations officers. And I would say do this as soon as possible. I had to go out to the farmers market. So once a year at SLO Farmers Market, there's an evening for law enforcement, and they're all kind of lined up with their cars down there. And I just took kind of a flyer and started to meet them and talk to them. And eventually, if the commanders of your areas understand what you're trying to do, then they'll put you onto their public information officers. And that's really useful for when you're setting up tables, so that your table is right next to their table. And it behooves both of us to have that, and then to start sharing on social media the key initiatives that they're doing and that you're doing down on the key initiatives calendar. And even if you don't hit all of those, like on the right, if you can hit a couple of them in a year, like 4 or 5 of them in a year, then you're doing great. And if you weren't doing it before, it's a really powerful thing. Number 7, the planning structure, by like forming a Road to Zero committee. So this was really tricky because a lot of the people have committee fatigue. And if you don't have a safety committee meeting, everybody thinks it's a good idea, but not many people want to do it because they're already doing lots of different committees out there. And so I found myself looking back to what had happened back in time in our area, different committees like the 166 committee or the Corridor 46 committee. They all kind of started up and ran for like 4 years, and then they kind of died out. And what I found is that some of our neighbors, like down in Santa Barbara and up in the south of Salinas, US 101 Traffic Safety Alliance, they were kind of ongoing. Some are put on by MPOs, like SBCAG does the State Route 154. They meet like once every 2 years. or as needed. The South of Salinas Traffic Safety Alliance is an advocate-led thing. So trying to have a meeting going that isn't reactive to an event. That's just kind of always there so that people are meeting regularly. And then as something important comes up, then you're already around the table to deal with it. Number six, separating the technical work. We ended up doing that through a dedicated technical advisory committee to review the data processing. This was this was a really kind of useful way to bifurcate the work, and so that the regular action committee, like with CHP and the public information officers and the elected officials and others, didn't get didn't get pulled into too much of the technical discussions that are really underpin a lot of the work and underpin a lot of our safety making decision making. Um, and number five would be using field walks to validate your priorities. One of the things that we ended up doing was we didn't ask for enough money from our safety action plan. I think we asked for 320, and then we added 80 of our own, and so we had about 400 to deal with. And I was just shocked to see other areas around the state going for like 800 and 700 and many a lot more money at the time at that cycle. And I don't quite know what like the reasonable amount to ask is now, but we ended up supplementing some of our work by going direct to an Office of Traffic Safety grant. This is the same sort of money that pays for the Berkeley Safe Trek, and they do field walks. And so we were modeling a lot of our field walk activity off of what we were seeing down, in LA, and then kind of around the state with field walks. And then we're of course lucky enough to have amazing Cal Poly College of Engineering right here. And we did come up with our own walk audit worksheets, but the AARP walk audit toolkit is really, really good because when you hand these things to some of the volunteers in the community, they go, well, hey, I'm retired. This is great. Really, this is something that retired people can do. And that's absolutely yes. Yes, you can. Number four, again, this is something that Dr. Pandy mentioned at the beginning too, about the self-certification checklist. And so I don't know if you remember back on one of my previous slides, I had all those flags and one of them was red. So it turns out we did all this great planning and we were ready to button our plan up for the final. And we had great consultant team and everything. But when we submitted our plan to get the feedback, it bounced back. And our plan, as we thought in draft, would not have made us eligible for an implementation grant. And suddenly my executive director is doing intervention on us, saying, look, we need to apply for implementation money. That's the whole kind of point of this. So we had to kind of hustle and rethink how we were going after our strategy and project selection. And so that in this case, that ended up pointing back to the technical advisory group team to further refine the data and further refine areas of significance. And then there were some other things like, indicating how often we were going to update the data on our dashboard and stuff like that. So I would say like number four here is like, don't mess this up, and take Dr. Penny up on that, or just get your plan over to the feds as soon as possible would be a thing. And just a little, 4.1 here is once you do get the eligibility, the magic bullet of the having a Vision Zero plan approved is that Vision Zero plans can also, if local assistance, says, hey, you're qualified as local road safety equivalent, and then so you're eligible for cycle 13. And once we were through I had the Panama Canal in there, and not the Strait of Hormuz, but like that was through here, and this was great to have that. Number three is to pull your demonstration locations from existing corridor plans. So we had done 3 or 4 with the county recently. We're done. One of them, Vineyard Drive in Templeton, that was done. And out of that was a recommendation for either a signal or a roundabout. We just wanted to do kind of a plastic roundabout, like those Lego things that sit in the inscribed circle. So it's really low cost in the area, and we applied for the grant, the corridor plan, the safety field walk, and then showing this location. It was really a pretty straightforward application. We were, kind of lucky to get it. Um, could it have been more money? Yeah, but then we were stuck with the match, and even getting the 20% match for that was like, well, where's that going to come from? Um, One word of caution, though, and lesson from Vineyard Drive is that the Public Works Department, we had a great plan. We were all go for this. But just 2 weeks ago, the community came out and said that they didn't want a mini roundabout here because they were worried that the mini round demo would eventually lead to a full roundabout. And they came and pushed back. 90 of them came down the hill to the board chambers and really pushed back against this. So we are actually now working with the DOT on taking this same scope and finding another location for a demonstration project. So check your local support. Number two is the bundling. And one of the strategies that we're looking at, and at the moment, we're really looking for either projects that are safe routes to school projects, something on Main Street, something on a local road like a corridor where a roundabout could go in for a quick build demo. Um, so we're really looking for those kinds of three things. But the idea is combining all of that, combining field walks with demonstrations and multiple components in slightly different areas. They could be still in the same sort of place types, but having your grant application be multifaceted, I think is kind of one of the keys. That's one of the keys that we're looking for. And then lastly is really trying to build your local safety champions. So I've seen this nationally. We've seen this traffic safety champion at California Office of Traffic Safety. But one of the quick ways to find your community champions is to ask your elected officials on your board to give you 2 names of people who are currently sitting on a committee. It could be a city council group that's in like a traffic and circulation committee. It could be, but somebody who's been elected or nominated into a community level position, but ask your board member to nominate 2 of them to come to your safety forum. Our first few safety forums were not public. We held them privately with just 2 people from each community. They may or may not be your safe routes to school committee people. In a way, in our area, like our safe routes to school thing is moving, is a fine oiled machine, but finding road safety champions is a little bit harder. But once you start looking, you'll find that every community has them, and they want to come out and they want to talk about road safety. And with that, I'll just thank you very much for your time. And I'll stop sharing. And this is my email address.
Thank you, John. This was excellent. Some great points there. And then yeah, so you are welcome to put some questions in the chat. And I really like the idea of kind of connecting with the PIOs at the fire department, at the sheriff's office, and kind of because I think one thing that I do really believe based on my conversations with Federal Highway is that they really now don't think about safety as a whole system, right? So not just the roads or not just the public outreach and education, but the EMS and all of that. So I think bringing those components in is just a really good message. So thank you for that. And then, yeah, if there are any questions, please keep them posting on the chat. And John, if you see something that you want to respond to, feel free to do so. And then, in the meantime, let me bring out Chris Gioni and Barbara Voss from the city of Morgan Hill. If you can go ahead and share your slides, and we can. Uh, and yeah, you're welcome to put some questions in the chat, as I said. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor Pandey. Let me see, make sure I can get this up here. Is my sharing going okay? Awesome. So, just quick introduction. My name is Chris Chioni. I'm with the City of Morgan Hill. I am the Assistant City Manager and Public Services Director at the city, and I oversee our public works as well as other functions for the city. And I'm going to let Barbara introduce herself.
Hi, everyone.
Chris,
Oops, go ahead.
sorry, Chris, I think I'm seeing your presenter view rather than
Oh,
the slides. So
okay.
if, I don't know,
Yep.
maybe you need to switch the display setting there.
Yep. Gotcha.
Thank you. Sorry,
While
Barbara.
Chris is
So sorry
doing
about
that, I'll just introduce myself, Barbara Voss, and I work with Chris primarily on just supporting the grant writing functions, and that's about it. Welcome to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and so as I mentioned, we are with the City of Morgan Hill, and we're a little different perspective for us.
Yeah, the
We
slides are still not clear. I mean, they're now short somehow. I
okay.
know we did the sharing before
Let
and
me
it
try and
worked.
reshare this. Let me try one more
Yes,
time to
please.
reshare
There
it.
you
That'll
go.
be helpful.
Yes. We did the tech check. It worked back then. So
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
no, don't worry about it. All good. Thank you.
Okay, let me just try this one. And then I'm going to start. Are you guys, what are you guys seeing now?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint and not the slideshow version. So I think you have to click on the
Uh,
sort of bottom right, click on like where there's a presenter thing, I think maybe.
Yeah, it's doing a weird thing. Let me try this one more time.
Almost there.
Yeah.
And while Chris, you're getting on, I just want to just really circle back to John's presentation and how, there are some great pointers for the upcoming grant applications, but I hope you all noted that there were some pointers for like, what you should be doing long term as safety plan as well. So I think there is both types of ideas in there in John's presentation. So I hope you were able to get some good information from that for short and long term. And the other thing I want to note is that Daniel has been providing some great resources around like how to do in the chat about some legislation, some requirements that your plans need to have now, and some other modular roundabout webinars that are happening. So there's some great resources, great conversations happening in the chat. So please take a look at it there as well. Thanks.
All right. I think I know what I need to do. Sorry about that. It's weird. Um, okay.
So we do have a suggestion in the chat. I don't know if that'll be helpful, but take a look at that maybe. Thank you, Shams.
I think I got it. How does that look?
It's coming up here. Yeah, this is perfect. Thank
Great.
you.
You need to get rid of my three screens. It started strangely presenting on different screens than it was going, but I appreciate you guys bearing with me. So we'll just jump into it quickly because I know okay. So what we want to talk to you about is our kind of journey in SS4A funding and using it for kind of a smaller mid-sized city here in California. In the city of Morgan Hill, we've received two grants. We received from the 2024 cycle, the planning grant to to complete our comprehensive safety action plan. We received $200,000 from that, and the project's substantially complete. We have a comprehensive safety action plan on our website for the city of Morgan Hill. And then we received or have been received notice of award of from the 2025 grant cycle for a demonstration grant of just under $450,000. And we're going to talk about those grants and what we did to receive those grants. But before we do that, we just wanted to share a little bit about us in Morgan Hill because you all may not know that. We are a Northern California city of 46,000 residents. We are 10 miles south of San Jose, so we are next to, we are part of Silicon Valley, but we have a nice, beautiful green belt of about 10 miles between us and the city of San Jose. We are about 13 square miles in size and have about 130 miles of centerline roadway. And we are a low-funded city, so we have pretty limited staff resources. So I think that's a good perspective to hear as we kind of talk through how we got and then what we did with these grants. So we have adopted Vision Zero back in 2018 with a goal to reach zero deaths and serious injuries by 2040. That's a city goal, so we had that in the background. The other interesting thing, as we applied for the planning grant funding, we were in the midst of preparing the city's first ever transportation master plan. So that was a first for us. So we really looked at the opportunity to kind of build off that plan to complete our comprehensive safety action plan. So when we went and applied for the SSA4 funding for the 2024 cycle, we really had some priorities for the city, and our biggest priority was to make us eligible for the implementation grants because we thought that would be the biggest value for us is to get funding to make improvements. And then the other piece we really were looking at is transitioning from this very high visionary level of our 2018 Vision Zero to some more concrete, actionable steps that we could do to improve safety in our community. And we also wanted to build off our 2024 transportation master plan that we just completed to really take it down from a higher level to a level that really focused on specifics within our community on how we can improve multimodal safety. So, and so what we really applied for was we took some of the info from the transportation master plan, including level of stress, and used that in our application as part of the foundation for our application. And we referenced several of our past planning documents in preparing the 2024 application. One of the things, as I mentioned, we have low resources in-house. We don't have any transportation planning in-house for the city. We have, an engineering team that is kind of a multidiscipline engineering team, so no specific traffic or transportation engineers. We do a lot of different engineering on development, but nothing specific. So we actually ended up partnering with a consultant. Tool Design is a consultant that specializes in supporting innovative streets and dynamic communities, and is really, excuse me, they were a sub-consultant for the development of our transportation master plan, and that's how we were introduced to them. So in us trying to build off, it made sense that we worked with them. And they have helped us not only in the grant application, but actually were the ones who put together the comprehensive safety action plan. So Our grant application, we came up with the idea that we were going to have a public engagement plan, which I think is a cornerstone of applying for these grants. And that plan was going to identify the key audiences and stakeholders that were going to provide input to our community. The plan outlined specific things, obviously a project website, in-person and online surveys. We did significant pop-up events. We attended a lot of events and did small group meetings as well. We committed to do that, and then we committed to form, and we did form a advisory committee that were made up of residents, interest groups, and actually representatives from all of our school sites that provided oversight during the plan development and met regularly. We committed to interagency consultation. So with us being a smaller city, we do rely a lot on coordination with our regional countywide transportation entity, which is the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. So we call them the VTA. So they have participated with staff appointed to participate in our plans, reviewed our plans, and given us comments on our plans. And then one of the other big things we committed to was taking equity considerations into our plan and making not only on the outreach being inclusive, but looking at the data inclusively to provide special considerations to potential underserved areas of our community. In developing our plan, we use the funding. The funding for the 2024 funding was completely used to develop our comprehensive safety action plan and do all the outreach to development. As I mentioned, we had the 25-member advisory committee. I didn't mention, but that advisory committee included internal city staff in addition to the other ones I mentioned, which was our police department, fire department, as well as representatives from our engineering team and community services group. And then we did gather 380 survey responses and used an interactive map component as well, where they could use the GIS to basically note where they felt unsafe within the community and what the reason for. So we thought that was pretty neat and worked out well for us. And then part of our plan, a big part of our plan was developing in-depth safe routes to schools recommendations. And so our engineering team, as well as planners and engineers from tool design and our police department as well, performed walk audits with school site staff at all the public schools within the city of Morgan Hill. So some of the key insights we found from our plan, there were our vulnerable users. Like the incidents involving non-vehicular accidents were very small, but a huge number of those crashes that involved bikes and peds were the more serious accidents that occurred. So instead of just looking at the data overall, we kind of looked at that stat, and we also looked at where the critical locations were, not just where in the city, but at different locations within a roadway segment itself. So what we were finding is a lot of the crashes and injuries were not at the intersections, but were at mid-block and in different areas. Then we also mentioned that there were some of our community some members of our community that were being more impacted by accidents. So we noticed our Latino community represented a higher percentage of the injury-related crashes, despite being a smaller representative of the population. And then as we walked through the walk audits that we did on each site, we noticed that we had the representatives from schools. We identified gaps in sidewalks and bike lanes that were being noticed by the students and parents and maybe not noticed as much in our overall transportation master plan. So we thought that was big. And then we also noticed there was high speeds near school was identified by a lot of members of the community. So what our plan was in summary, we developed a high injury network within the plan, and the high injury network wasn't just based on where the injuries had occurred in the past, but it was also we also looked at where we thought they could occur in the future, and that was really a big component of our plan. And the second big component, these were the first the biggest parts of the plan was the safe routes to school infrastructure. So we developed a complete plan for each school site with various improvements. The plan also called for quick build safety interventions, which led directly into our demonstration grant, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then some looking at adopting a systematic speed management approach and recommendations on us updating our policies and design standards to improve safety for the city. So after we completed well, actually, it was before we completed the comprehensive safety action plan. When we applied for the 2025 grant funding, we were actually in the middle of completing our comprehensive safety action plan. So we had some of the findings, but they hadn't been formally approved by our city council or even by our stakeholders group. But what we were eligible to apply for at the time, because we were in process, we couldn't apply for an implementation grant last year, so we applied for the uh, demonstration grant. And so what we were looking at when we were applying for it, we weren't just focusing on, hey, demonstration to prove things can work. We also wanted the demonstration grant to be something that could be sustainable, even though it could be quickly built, something that could be sustainable for our community for a long time where the improvements were made. So the grant outlined several areas, and I'll talk about them in a minute, where we could do low cost, quick build projects to test those safety interventions really quickly. And so, and it really the projects are designed to address those issues I mentioned a moment ago in our safety action plan. So what we committed to in the grant application was before and after field surveys to evaluate the effectiveness of the changes we're going to make. And as I mentioned, our application allowed us to move forward concurrently as we completed our safety action plan. So, what the big components in our demonstration grant were for our 2025 grant application were RRFBs, or the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at intersections, and then quick build safety items for the school sites, which I mentioned was part of our comprehensive safety action plan. So really implementing a lot of the findings of the plan in the quick build opportunities at the school. Um, and then those two areas were focused on next to school sites. And then, as I mentioned, that came out of our comprehensive safety action plan, we're looking to purchase and deploy citywide speed radar signs and implement software that monitors real-time traffic speed. So that was part of our demonstration grant that'll help us report out updates to changes we've made. And then we would potentially update our safety action plan after we get results from the demonstration sites that we do. So we ended up receiving the 450 in funding, and then we were required to have a local match of just over $112,000. We expect once we get our agreement in place, we will implement everything in a 15 to 24 month window to get everything implemented, and then uh, complete the demonstration and look at the data we've collected. And we actually are, as kind of a final stage of completing our comprehensive safety action plan, we are doing a safety awareness campaign which we're currently going to be launching in May. And so the implementation of our demonstration projects will occur concurrently with that safety awareness campaign. So just some of the things we had on grant expectations and recommendations. We found and Barb can talk more to this if people have questions. We found getting the agreements completed can often be as difficult as a grant application. And then the timing of funding, it does take a while, and maybe we should have expected this, but we didn't completely expect it. We were hoping that we would have the funding for the 2024 award available to use by the end of or in 2024, but that really wasn't the case. We really weren't able to use it that way. So we kind of had a kind of lapse between completing our transportation master plan and being able to update the comprehensive safety action plan, which we just adopted earlier this year. So just understanding that just because you have the award doesn't mean you're going to get the money really quickly. That was something that we learned. We did have an interesting time when the changing administration required updates to our agreement, and we had actually some risks there. We thought we might not get our funding, even though we were halfway through the project with a signed agreement, but we were able to work all that out and kept our funding. We found it as a smaller agency very beneficial to have a consultant with us the whole way through because we didn't have the in-house resources to really uh, brainstorm on the opportunities we had with the grant funding. They helped us really expand that, and it was very beneficial. And we often use different consultants for different things, but we really found that having a transportation consultant that understands transportation safety is a big benefit in this area. Um, and the other thing we've done always as a low resource city, we've included our staff time in the overall project budgets to include it as a local match for the grant funding. So we do that to help us even a little more. And I think with that, that concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer questions in the chat or whatever the best way is to do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate the presentation. So are there any questions in the chat? I don't see one right now. But Chris, could you talk a little bit about, like I know you mentioned that a little bit, but could you elaborate a little bit on the process of, you know, when you were doing the planning and demonstration grant of the second cycle in 2025, and your 2024 grant was still underway because it started so late, and obviously you were eligible for that application, but I'm just curious, like what you were able to take away from the planning work that you were already doing, the development of your plan, and what you were able to take away for your next grant, and what are some ideas there that you could use versus what things that came out in the plan later in the process that you actually couldn't use in the grant. Does that make sense? I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get a sense
Yeah.
of like if maybe because folks might be in the same boat, maybe they got the planning grant last year and they're going for a planning and demonstration grant. So then, what you're able to use from that information you're able to use and versus,
Yeah. So, I mean, we used all the information we had at the time. So, at the time, we had done some of the safe routes work already, and we had done a lot of the data collection already. We just hadn't um, really figured out what kind of the final recommendations of the plan were. So since we
Sure.
had that, our group came together and said, what are the eligible things we can construct using the demonstration grant, which was basically, quick build items, which was we called it, I mean, consultants called it pipe and paint. And then we looked at RRFBs, which would be considered quick build too, so we really kind of said, what are the things that are available that we can use, and kind of fit that into the data that we had on the issues we were having. And that's why we had a bigger focus on school. But we also had the data kind of citywide on the issue with speeding, and that's where kind of the software and signage came from. So our hope is, so we kind of pulled those things and say, hey, we don't know that these are going to be the final recommendations, but these are things we think we can use, and they will be within our plan one way or another. And how do we implement? How can we implement those without knowing the final recommendations? But the good part was that we understood it after we complete the demonstration grant. If some of these things really work or don't work, then we can update our plan based off that. So we basically use the data we had.
That's great. That's good insight. Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Um, So there is, I think there is a general question about the SS4A self-certification eligibility worksheet. I don't believe so, but what I can do is I can just confirm with Federal Highway as well. But I don't believe you have to go through a new self-certification every year. If your plan is already approved to go ahead for an implementation grant, I think you should be good to go. But if it's not approved for an implementation grant, you might need to get it approved. But I'll also confirm with SS4A, but that's my understanding. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay, last but not the least, now we have the panelists from the RCI team, Reconnecting Community Institutes. So let's go ahead and welcome Will and his team. Perfect. I see Anne and Melissa as well. Thank you for joining. Yeah,
Well, we can see the
slides are.
slides, but aren't hearing you.
Oh, um, is Will already presenting? Yeah, I cannot hear Will anymore. I didn't hear him.
Hi, Will. Are you able to unmute?
Doesn't look like he's muted on the screen. And now I'm not still able to hear Will.
Can you hear me
But
okay?
how about now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Now, yeah, now it works.
There
Thank
you
you.
are.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. That was strange.
Yeah, it's a technical difficulties day.
It seems so. All right, let me, so
Go ahead.
you all can see my screen.
Yeah, but it's not
Yes,
in
and
presenter mode.
It is or is not.
Now it
it
is.
it is presenter mode. Yeah. Thank you.
It's presenter mode.
Perfect.
Sorry, no, it looks right.
It
Well,
looks
wait,
right.
we're
Okay.
confused.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, and sorry about those technical difficulties. It's great to be here with everyone. I'm Will Sloan. I'm with the Cadmus Group, which is the lead contractor for US DOT's Reconnecting Communities Institute, which we are excited to talk to you all about today. We'll share some information on the Institute as another potential source of free technical support for your projects. As Dr. Pandey mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, there are several overlaps between the goals of RCI and those of the SS4A program, and several of the communities we currently support are either applying for or have received SS4A grants for their projects. So we'll be happy to answer any questions you all have about the Institute at the end of the presentation, including around whether your project may be a good fit for RCI support. So just to run quickly through what we will cover in this presentation, I am joined by a couple other members of our team. So we'll start with some brief introductions. We'll then provide a high-level overview of RCI and the types of projects and entities we support. We'll dive into some more of the details of our technical assistance offerings, including some of those examples of how we've worked with SS4A applicants and grantees in the past. We'll explain how to request RCI support if it sounds like the right fit for your project, and then open it up for Q&A. All right. So again, I'm Will Sloan. I serve as the RCI team's outreach lead. So I oversee our work aimed at raising awareness about the Institute with eligible communities. I also manage our website where you can request RCI support, and we'll make sure to drop that website into the chat. And then I provide a range of support related to communications and outreach work that our RCI participants are working on for their projects. I am joined today by two of our colleagues on the RCI team. I will pass over to Melissa for a brief introduction.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Melissa Diaz. I'm the project manager for the RCI project. And then I also oversee basically the design of all of our technical assistance. So really happy to walk everyone through that today. I will also note that in addition to Cadmus, RCI is a team of 13 different firms that all have different expertise in transportation reconnection. And so part of our goal is to make sure that we are connecting the right communities with the right questions to the right experts throughout. So while you're just hearing from Cadmus, we're a much bigger team. And over to Anna.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Charpentier. On RCI, I serve as the community liaison lead. So I meet regularly with our RCI participants, working to match them with our technical assistance resources to make sure they're making the most of their participation in RCI. Thanks so much.
So just a quick overview of what RCI is. So RCI, as I mentioned, is a US DOT Technical Assistance Center. And our mission is to help communities expand economic opportunity and mobility through innovative transportation reconnection projects. We'll get into what we mean by reconnection projects and how that overlaps with SS4A funded projects on the next slide. But in terms of how we achieve that mission, we provide free project readiness and development support to communities working on reconnection projects through a broad range of technical assistance offerings, all tailored to the needs of participating communities. These range across group technical assistance trainings and workshops, peer-based learning through our community of practice, direct one-on-one support with communities, and through the development of on-demand tools, templates, and other resources that communities can leverage to support various aspects of their projects. So as I mentioned, RCI was established to support what we and US DOT call reconnection projects. So what do we mean by that? RCI's definition of a reconnection project is one that addresses mobility barriers caused by transportation facilities to improve community connectivity. These barriers can be due to high speeds, grade separation, or other design factors. In terms of transportation facilities, those can include highways, viaducts, principal arterial roads, and other transportation facilities such as transit and rail lines. And some examples of common reconnection projects we support include safe street redesigns, highway caps and lids, pedestrian walkways or overpasses, and other projects to improve multimodal connectivity. I think the thing I would emphasize on this slide for this audience is that reconnection projects really come in many shapes and sizes. they're really defined by the goals of the project and the anticipated outcomes. So even if you haven't considered your project a reconnection project, if you've identified a safety challenge associated with a particular road or another transportation facility, and you're working on strategies to addressing that barrier that will result in a more connected and safer town or city, it may qualify for RCI support. As I mentioned, many of the projects we are currently supporting do have goals around improved roadway safety, and several of those participants have either applied for or have received an SS4A grant, and we'll provide some examples of that in a few slides. Just a quick snapshot of who we currently work with. So as shown on the map on the right, RCI currently supports over 130 reconnection projects, which are those orange dots on the map, across 42 states and territories, shaded in blue. These projects range from large infrastructure projects in major cities to smaller projects in rural or suburban areas. As you can see on the map, we support communities across the country from Hawaii to the northern tip of Maine, including several California communities. And we do accept projects on a rolling basis, so this map continues to grow each month. And then in terms of who can request support from RCI, so our primary criteria for participation is that the community or organization that requests support has a transportation project that includes some aspect of reconnection, as I defined on the earlier slide. Otherwise, we support any state, local, tribal, or territorial government, metropolitan planning organization, or nonprofit community organization working on those projects. We also support projects at any phase across project scoping, early and late stage planning, and implementation. And our team is really set up to be flexible and responsive to be able to meet communities where they are in the process and provide them with the right support to help move their project to the next phase. And with that, I will pass it over to Melissa to talk through the technical assistance process and to get into some of those details on our technical assistance offerings.
Yeah, thanks, Will. So now that we've talked a little bit about what RCI is and who is eligible for it, I'm going to walk through sort of how to get into RCI and then a little bit of the TA that we offer. I know that this group is really interested in the SS4A program, and that is a program that we have supported applicants through. But I will also warn that as you are seeing our intake process visualized here on the slide, and I'll walk through it. That takes on average about a month. So by the time we would have a community fully into RCI, it would be a little bit tight for application support. So we really are mostly here to talk about how we can support your SS4A style project. And then if you were interested in getting application support in future rounds, what that would look like. So diving into what you're actually seeing here is that the first step is that you fill out an expression of interest form, which is a really, really simple online form. It's on the rciconnect.org website. And then we basically look at that and say, are you meeting the basic criteria for eligibility in terms of what kind of organization you are and that you have something that sounds like a reconnection project? Then we'll dig deeper into that through an intake survey. We'll actually get you on the phone for about half an hour and talk about your project. And that has two purposes. One is to give us enough information to take your project to USDOT to get approval, because the USDOT has to approve every participant that is in RCI. And then the second is also to make sure that you can get enough knowledge about the program to ensure that it is something that you want to do. Getting technical assistance, while it is free, is not free in terms of your time, and we want to make sure that your time is well spent in the Institute and that it's a good fit. And so throughout the whole intake process, we're making sure that you feel confident about that and that we're having a conversation about that. So then USDOT provides approval or doesn't approve. Once they approve, you get access to the authenticated website, which has a lot more on it than what you'll see on the web link that was put in the chat. It has access to all of our on-demand resource, which includes data guidance, recorded group TA sessions that we've had, different templates that we've put together, and different message boards through the community of practice are all on that website. We'll be digging into some of those a little bit more detail in a couple of slides. But then your next step in terms of onboarding is to do a group onboarding workshop, which is a requirement of DOT that we bring all participants in, really make sure that they understand how to access resources, what their next steps are in the program. And then we also use this where we try and have a couple different communities on any onboarding workshop to start you networking with other folks who might be working on very similar projects. And then the final step is we'll start developing an individualized technical assistance plan for each participant to help curate and tailor some of the resources, and so that you're not having to dig through all of our on-demand resources, that you're getting recommendations of specific ones to start with, that we'll start scoping out what a one-on-one engagement could look like if that seems like a good fit, or connecting you to resources like our data and software support if that feels like a good fit too. So to the next slide. So here's just an example of some of the technical assistance that we've provided in the past. So you'll see in the blue box example topics that we've covered. So what you'll see is this ranges. We have had a lot of communities coming in with the question of how do I cover funding and financing gaps in my project? I don't have enough money. If they already have a grant, they're looking for some additional. Some communities come in with no funding and they're just trying to figure out what might be a good fit. So that's a pretty popular offering. We also have communities that are really looking for some engineering feedback, looking at whether the design of two different bridge options, which one is the best fit, and getting some advice on that. We've had quite a bit of success helping communities also put together RFPs that are actually going to get the work accomplished that they're trying to get accomplished. And we've provided support for some of that procurement style needs. And then all of the other topics here, I won't read every single one for one. And then the other part of it is that we also try and tie the format of how you're getting technical assistance to the right goals of the topic. So sometimes, for example, if you need support writing an RFP, that's not something that makes sense to do in a group setting. So we most likely would do that through one-on-one technical assistance, where we would pair you directly with one of our team members to help you work through and draft and provide feedback on that RFP support. Whereas on the other hand, if you just want to understand sort of the basics of philanthropic funding, we've done that through a workshop or a training that's more in a group setting where we're providing some of that 101. So we have a whole bunch of TA formats. We'll be digging deeper into some of those in a couple of slides. Next slide. Here's some examples of some of the group RCI TA we've done. So this is more of that group setting, just to give you a little bit more color into some of that. Project scoping and development. We know that one of the common challenges that communities come in is that they have a lot of things that they want to accomplish, and it's not narrow enough to apply for funding or to really make sustained progress. So one of the things that we've helped communities do through this particular workshop was narrow it down on a really functional scope for a project. One session that's actually upcoming is that second one, unlocking TIF, TIFIA, and air rights for community reconnection. We are hearing from the Department of Transportation that they highly value financing and innovative financing techniques being incorporated into projects. And so we're helping communities think through what might be the right fit for them. Once again, I won't read through every one of these. I'll also just highlight the second to the bottom on the list, community conversation series. One of the things that we also try to do is elevate the projects within RCI and have members share with each other what is really working and what innovative things they're doing. So we've invited communities over the course of each year of the program to present on something that they're doing, whether it's using data in really innovative ways or forming really unique partnerships or using art in their project. And we've had them talk about some of their successes that they've had in their projects. Next slide. And with this, I will hand it over to Anna to talk through some examples of TA we've done.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. So I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about our technical assistance and provide some examples about how our TA can especially aid Safe Streets for All work. In addition to the group TA that Melissa mentioned, we also provide direct one-on-one TA. So through this channel, we are able to provide direct support on a specific problem, challenge, or need. We can help RCI participants envision their project, do transportation planning work, and provide guidance all the way through implementation. So for Safe Streets for All, we provided one-on-one TA to a number of 2025 applicants. So one specific example for SS4A application support was with a rural Georgia community who is divided by two major highways. They requested RCI's support to advance a strategic infrastructure vision, prioritizing safety in their community. And the participant has been restrained by limited resources and staff capacity. So they asked for RCI TA to help with pursuing a 2025 Safe Streets for All grant. So in June of 2025, RCI reviewed the TA participants' draft Safe Streets for All grant narrative, which was subsequently awarded funding their first safety action plan. In addition to that support, we wanted to help set them up for success moving forward with future grant applications. So RCI also helped with developing a GIS database that contained over 100 data layers, and that was to help strengthen their ability to supplement future grant narratives with accurate and easily accessible data. Next slide, please. And then in addition to providing one-on-one TA for applying to the Safe Streets for All grant, we also provide tailored assistance for administering funded grant projects. So I have an example here for Slidell, Louisiana. And although they don't have Safe Streets for All funding, they have Reconnecting Communities pilot program funding. This is still a great example of how we provide support for implementing their grant. So in developing an individual technical assistance plan for the city of Slidell, which every RCI participant receives, RCI helped to identify a need for the city to procure a consultant for its mobility master plan, which was the planning in their RCP funding. So RCI matched Slidell with a group of subject matter experts that had extensive experience with procurement for federal grant funding projects. And so after an initial call between the SMEs and Slidell, RCI helped to develop an RFQ best practices memo, and then also provided a direct review and some feedback on the draft RFQ itself. And that RFQ was posted back in February 5th of 2025. Next slide. In addition to one-on-one TA and group TA, we also host a community of practice for participants, which is a peer learning forum for participants from different communities to share ideas, tackle challenges, and build relationships with their peers. The community of practice includes both virtual and in-person collaboration opportunities through a number of different means. We have member spotlights, and then we also host a number of working groups focus on key transportation reconnection topics. So we have a couple examples here on the slide. In 2025, we hosted 8 working groups on a number of topics. Some include funding capital and planning projects, rural and small communities, government organizations forming local partnerships, and coordinating land use and transportation. In 2026, we currently have 3 working groups in progress, and those are the ones you see on the screen: revitalizing main streets, implementing demonstration projects, and paths to connection, which focuses on multi-use trails. Next slide. And so I wanted to highlight one specific example from our working groups. Just this March, our Implementing Demonstration Projects working group convened in Roanoke, Virginia, to do a site visit of a current demonstration project funded by a Safe Streets for All grant. We heard from subject matter experts involved in implementing these projects and networked with professionals undertaking similar work. 6 RCI participants joined us for the day and a half long in-person workshop, which included site visits, design exercises, and facilitated activities and discussion. And some example topics of things we discussed and covered include quick build, project materials, data collection and analysis, and community engagement strategies. After the in-person session, participants developed action plans in the final working group meeting, setting themselves up for success after the working group ends. Next slide, please. And then finally, one other stream of our technical assistance comes in the format of on-demand resources. So RCI develops new materials and resources on a number of topics related to transportation reconnection. I wanted to highlight the specific resource on the screen, the Guide to Demonstration Projects for Reconnection, as it's closely tied to Safe Streets for All work. This resource outlines key steps for implementing demonstration projects and how to leverage them for long-term change. There's also an accompanying workshop that can help you with planning your demonstration project, collecting data on its outcomes, and using that data to support work towards a permanent project. And this is just one example of on-demand resource. We have a number of other materials related to using data, tools, and analysis for transportation reconnection projects, all hosted on our website. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Melissa to talk about how to apply to RCI's technical assistance.
Yeah, so I'll round us out quickly. So if any of this sounded potentially of interest, go ahead and fill out the expression of interest form. You'll see here on the slide where to find that on our website. So once again, it's a pretty quick form. You just fill out a little bit of information about you, about your project, and then we'll be in touch to learn more. And if you have questions, we're also happy to answer in the chat anything about whether you might be a good fit or not. But to maybe get in front of a couple of those questions, I will go to the next slide and answer ones that we tend to get a lot, which is there a cost associated with RCI technical assistance? And the answer is no. This is a program paid for by DOT, and it was originally connected to the Reconnecting Communities grant program, which we know is no longer around, but we have always supported projects that don't have that particular grant, and we can take anybody as long as they have a project that is a reconnection project. And then can RCI provide funding for my project? So no, we do not provide funding directly, but can help you brainstorm how to get funding or what funding might be a good fit for your project. And then the final question that we often get is, will I need to attend all the webinars and trainings? And no, while I think what you get out of RCI is often imbalanced to what you put in terms of being able to connect with your community liaison support, really scoping out a really good one-on-one, attending some of our webinars. All of it is voluntary, so you can kind of pick and choose and create your own adventure and get as much help or as little help as you need. And that is all we have. But as we said before, we are happy to answer questions, and all of our emails are here on the slide.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have 2 questions in the chat. So I'll take the second one. I'll ask the second one first that I put in the chat. So once let's say you're eligible a participant for your technical support, let's say US DOT deems in one of the agencies and their project eligible, how long does that eligibility last, right? Let's say somebody applies for an SS4A. I know the deadline's coming up, but are you eligible for an ongoing assistance? Let's say you put together an SS4A application, it gets funded, or if it doesn't get funded, could you apply for the other programs, other federal programs for funding? So does that partnership keeps on going, or does that have to be renewed every cycle or every year? How does that work?
Yeah, participation in RCI is not time limited. We are a contract under DOT right now. We are projecting that RCI will be around until around 2028. And as long as you have needs that are a good match for RCI, we would continue helping you throughout that period of time. We find that most people sort of have a peak in which they need help, and then it sort of starts to wane a little bit, and maybe we continue to check in with them, but they don't need that same sort of high level of support.
So perhaps what I'm hearing from you is that connecting with your RCI would still be a good idea from an SS4A, if there is an RCI eligible grant there or RCI eligible project, and then,
100%.
communities
Yep.
can decide how they want to keep the ongoing conversations with you.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. That's great to know. And then just real quick about, I know this focus of this is SS4A, but what other programs, federal, programs that your RCI has supported communities with, or even it could be state grants. I'm just curious about what other funding sources your participants, your agencies have been successful in getting funded these projects from.
Yeah, I will let Anna or Will chime in too, but the obviously the most common grant that people come into RCI with is a Reconnecting Communities program or a Neighborhood
Yeah.
Access and Equity grant, because that's what we were designed and who we did our primary outreach. We also have folks who have the Rural Tribal Assistance Grants, IFAC grantees, and a number of state grants. So it's pretty diverse in terms of where people are getting funding. We have some that are working really closely with philanthropic sources. So it's not the grant, it's the project that matters,
Yes.
ultimately, in terms of getting into the institute.
Okay. That is great. Anything else from Will or Anna that you want to add to that?
Just that, yeah, that's a key question that we get from a lot of communities when they come in is like, not necessarily their projects haven't necessarily received funding to participate in RCI. So we help them kind of identify what are those opportunities that would be most applicable for their projects.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. So I think maybe partnering with you, starting that partnership, if you have a project that seems like that might fit well with RCI, I think engaging with RCI may be a great opportunity, not just for this one specific SS4A type grant, but like maybe a long-term engagement opportunity. So, and then perhaps that's the other thing I want to like, maybe we can bring you back in like maybe 6 months, 9 months, maybe perhaps there is no current grant program ongoing, but maybe there is another opportunity to get engaged with you guys to kind of learn more with different set of agencies participating in the webinar. So thank you for the information you provided today. That's great. Are
Absolutely.
there
Thanks for
any
having
other
us.
questions? Yeah, are there any other questions? If not, then I'll just kind of go back to my slide sharing. So we'll just wait for folks to see if there are other questions. I don't see any. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I have shared my screen. And I will just wrap up here in just a second. So let me. So I have these three. Just want to get your survey, a feedback survey. So this is the top link. Our top QR code is for our feedback survey. So if you could take that survey and let us know how we did and how we can make our programming from SNCC better. We're going to have another webinar for SS4A on May 13th, 2026. So register for that one. I think we are still you still have the opportunity to shape that programming. If you register for that webinar, we will be reaching out to you via that registration, also in our newsletter, for you to kind of give us some feedback on what you would want to see 10 days before the deadline. So I know the deadline will be pretty soon after our May 13th webinar. So we want to hear from you what will be the most important thing for you. We can potentially help you with your standard forms. So if you want to be a community that wants our help in filling out those standard forms, we can provide you with that help. And then all we ask is you let us record, or at least make use of that information as you're supporting you to help other communities within California as well. So that could be a potential topic, but we'll be asking you for other things that may be helpful for you guys, so that we can tailor our content to what's going to be most helpful to you. But you can register for that webinar. And if you're on that registration list, we'll be reaching out to you for what will be most beneficial to you as we create the content for the next month's webinar. And then the link for the last link in the QR code is a Calendly link where you can set up a one-on-one assistance meeting with us at Safety Navigator for California Communities. So please feel free to take advantage of that. And then last is our email address on which you can reach out to us with any questions you may have. So with that, I want to just go ahead and acknowledge our guest panelists who were here today. So thank you very much for your time and preparation. Really appreciate it. I hope and I know our registration, our webinar participants also appreciate that. And I acknowledge our coordinator, Deborah Hood, for doing all the behind the scenes work, as well as the managing the chat that was kind of chaotic with my own messages. So thank you for that. And I want to thank our partners at CalTap from Cal State Long Beach for promoting our programming. We get a lot of connections through that. So thank you. And last but not the least, I want to acknowledge Daniel Burke, who is our contract manager. He's from the Division of Local Assistance. So thank you for your support, Daniel, and all the great information you provided in the chat as well. So unless there are any last minute questions, I want to thank everybody for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you in our future programming. And just please feel free to reach out with email or with any questions or anything like that. I'll leave up the QR codes for the feedback survey. We'll really appreciate your feedback. And then registration for the May 13th webinar and some information on the one-on-one assistance. Thank you. I believe you can close out the webinar.
Got it.
Thank you. All right.